Zoom is a mystery, and we are all learning together. So I am delighted to see you here. I expect that a few more people will come in and join us, but since I've gotten us off to a late start already, I want to go ahead and get moving. This is the second in our series of workshops of the Cardinal Foundation Seminar. I know that not all of you are currently scheduled to teach a foundation seminar for the fall. I hope that all of you will teach a foundation seminar when you are able to. I know it's up to the departments and all kinds of complications. Currently, we have 16 foundation seminars on the schedule for the fall. We need in the neighborhood of 40. So what I expect in the next few weeks as the schedule shakes out and we see what kinds of classes are being offered and what might be more than is needed for the incoming freshman class, that we're able to transfer some of those into foundation seminars. So tell your friends who are super jealous that you're here and doing this, that there's room for more. So we are certainly still accepting proposals for seminars, and it's pretty much a given that if you make a proposal, we will find a way to get you onto the schedule. Without further ado, then, I want to turn things over to Elizabeth Bernat from Academic Advising and to Carrie Woodward from Admissions, who will tell us what to expect from these first-year students that we are so eagerly awaiting. Elizabeth, take it away.
Sure, thank you, Wendy. And it's good to present with you, Carrie. When Wendy first asked us to present about, to sort of define the fall first year class of 2021, their characteristics and needs, you know, I could probably speak for days about it on the micro level. But the result of that request was a complete flood of thoughts that, because they have amassed in me for the last couple of years, sort of almost with nowhere to go, and this stockpile of thoughts about the characteristics and what we could do to assist better came from a combination of places and experiences that I had. Of course, about 2 or 3 years ago, we had the CTE year focus on Generation Z and understanding it better, both empirical and non-empirical insights from that. But it wasn't just that, and it wasn't just the year, 2, 3 years lately of the first year experience listserv and scholarship to come out of that. It was working in the summer with hundreds of families during that summertime, fielding their questions, seeing them navigate, seeing what was important to them, what they were asking about, and it was so different from even 5 years prior to that. So seeing it through their eyes is something that other offices and people don't see. But it was also drawn from the hundreds of college withdrawal forms that passed through our office for non-medical reasons. And we asked them on the form for the top 3 reasons or factors that lead to their decision at this time to separate from the college. And we saw how that was beginning to change a little bit recently. Most people don't see. And I also add to that the experience of reading every academic appeal or intent to return on probation statement where students state what didn't work well, what the obstacles were. So if you pool all that together, if we know the disposition of the students coming in, and we know nationally as well, and we know specifically at SUNY Plattsburgh, what wasn't working for them? What did they need and that wasn't fulfilled? If you combine all of that, you get a kind of a ready-made list of considerations that we can consider as we plan for the fall in general, and of course for CFS 1889 course. And that's what I'd like to share with you. And I'm going to share screen now, and I'd like to share with you 4 broad considerations. So these considerations are far from comprehensive, but and each consideration that I'd like to share with you is what I consider a pre-existing condition. So a condition pre-existing the pandemic, but that the pandemic year has exacerbated or aggravated in some way. So we're seeing it more in 2021. I think though it's far from comprehensive, it's a good place to start in terms of the focus for Cardinal core curriculum considerations. So the first that I'd like to share with you of the four is that this group, and you've heard this before probably, have hit developmental milestones later than any generation before it. And by milestones, I do mean anything from social milestones like dating, drinking, things like that, to driving, employment, even sitting, like kind of tarrying in disappointment or struggle or success without snapping, posting, and tweeting what their experience is. So I'm talking about any of the usual passages or firsts, being home alone for the first time, running errands for the first time. Those firsts of independence are quite delayed. And when I say in the second bullet there that it's not their fault, we kind of sometimes make it their fault that they have not had experiences that we did. And I want to tell you just a quick story. I had a very heartwarming conversation with my mom a few years ago, soon after my dad passed. I'm from Niagara Falls. Both my parents are from Niagara Falls, New York, because their immigrant parents landed in Niagara Falls, New York. And whenever we needed to go to Buffalo, go outside of Niagara Falls or the suburbs, my dad would drive. So for their 59 years of marriage, my dad drove. Then he passed away. And so after that, my mom had to go to Buffalo for something. And she's very humbly said, I've been there hundreds of times. But I'm not sure I know how to get there. Because my father did the driving. Now, was it her fault that she didn't know how to get there? Was it her fault? No, it was the way the family, it was part of the family flow that this is what we did. And she had to learn in her 70s how to drive to various places in Buffalo, just like how to call the maintenance guy, and how to do the plowing contract. So my point of this is that she never had to pilot that before. And so too, our students have never had to pilot certain things, have never had to make decisions on their own. So what do they need? They need how to help in navigating very routine scenarios that we might take for granted, especially academic ones. It's syllabus week. Okay, what do you do with all that? You have to make an appointment. You have to go to office hours, how to label the emails and sort through that. These are little nuggets that could be spent 5 minutes here, 3 minutes there in a classroom that helps them develop a mental map for things, develop independence, and of course, gain confidence. And this kind of thing really opens the door to other kinds of cognitive learning. The second characteristic I'd like to mention is that this group is closer to and spend more time with their families than generations before. By this, I mean that we've spent a lot of time as a college and a lot of talk on separating, so to speak, the student from the cord of the family, when in actuality, the enmeshment of the family has gotten deeper and stronger in the last few years. I think we almost have to abandon the somewhat outdated metaphors of helicopter parent, Black Hawk Down in the worst case scenarios, even lawnmower parenting to some extent, even though these things exist, because rather than parents hovering now like a drone, what's happening is that students are actively soliciting the participation in what I would call the co-piloting of their lives, even for the smallest acts. Parents are increasingly calling our office, and I'm assuming they would call admissions and registrar in the same way. we're registering right now. We would like to have a general advisement session. We are thinking about our options for a major. And because of this, and it's only one of the reasons, I guess, but COVID has intensified this. As students have been learning at home, so more is revealed. And it's easier to share experiences of the parents to the students, and the students to the parents. And so when students leave the nest, now some do backflips down Ruger Street yelling, I'm free, on move-in day. And for some who are leaving very harsh home lives, Plattsburgh is like a refuge. But increasingly so, homesickness has become debilitating and attached to other mood disorders. In fact, it's been debilitating. And it's the number 2 reason for personal college withdrawal. Number 1 being transfer, but you can see there's probably overlap there. So while we can't, it's painful to hear them say, I just want to go home. I just want to go home. And we can't substitute in the classroom or as advisors for the family pet or the neighborhood deli. But I think if we deconstructed some of the dimensions of home, we can provide some of that in the classroom. And it begins with, I think a great start is showing caring. We don't have to be maternal, but we can be caring. And that's one of the factors that this past year in the college withdrawals were with online learning and with even Zoom learning. I didn't think my instructor cared. And that's a sad, sad truth. So I think somehow establishing a sense of home and any dimensions of home that we can provide would help to mediate that a little bit. Probably my favorite of these 4 characteristics is this one: anxiety, anxiety, anxiety. And it's the most, I would say, most prolific attention on this point in the last 5 or 10 years within the first year experience circles. As I've written here, students feel less safe, leaders cannot keep them safe. Anything that we consider little, like an email that has the words you must or you didn't or you failed or something like that, can cause students to short circuit a bit. It's overwhelming. Having a few things happen at the same time, much depression, much shutting down, much disengagement, difficulty coping, lack of persistence, all of these. Now, we know this isn't every single student, but it's trending sharply, the increase in this. Additionally, digital natives, always connected to more people, but the highest levels of loneliness compared with any generation before it. You are all more than aware of the mental health crisis in the nation, and especially on college campuses. And this discourse in higher education, though, is not just about diagnoses and getting people to counseling. The discourse on this issue is centered on meeting the socio-emotional needs, treating the student in a holistic way. That socio-emotional needs for learning cannot be separated from curriculum. It cannot only be solved by more therapists, hiring more therapists, and it can't be left to chance either. It has to be intentional. So my point here in what students need is that intentional development of what's called positive emotions or positive psychology and attitudes in order for them to thrive. It's overcoming the negative self-talk, the shutting down instead of persisting, the lack of grit, the pessimism, and so forth. And there are ways of doing it, which I won't discuss in this moment. But again, this is for We can go all EAB here and take a look at the murky middle. The murky middle, especially low-end murky middle, they're not thriving. And oftentimes it's an academic skill gap or a socio-emotional need that hasn't been met. And the final of the four I wanted to spend just a moment on is that this group is increasingly speaking of value, wanting value, being very fiscally cautious. If they're in the home more, they are aware of the cost of higher education and the toll it takes on its family. Pair with that, we have a more diverse and equity-minded cohort who hopes for the future and wants to make a difference. So increasingly, we are getting individuals who say, I'm opting not to continue this education because I can do something different and be of greater service. They are ready to have other alternatives for education if they believe they can do more and have to spend less. Therefore, even in the first year classroom, if they're not learning that there's a practical application for what they're learning, if they don't understand the value of the course or of general education, it's more of a turnoff, I think, than it was before. So what do all of these points do combined? Yes, there are implications for cognitive skills in CFS 1889 and academic skills, no question. But when those skills, academic and cognitive skills, are not paired with even higher levels of attention to the socio-emotional development and needs of students, I think the outcome harkens back to what Nevitt Sanford wrote in 1967, where colleges fail, that more attention needs to be given to these factors. Students are asking for them, in fact, and we are talking about how students lack them sometimes. So I'm suggesting we look at a word between the classic recruit and retain and look at what we need to provide. After we recruit, in order to retain, what can we provide? And in terms of how we do it, I'm going to turn to the latest, and I mean 2 weeks ago, an open webinar, a You Thrive webinar with who you probably know as a guru, Joe Cusio, a guru of retention and access and first year experience, on what we need to do to respond in the classroom to the COVID situation, circumstances, those factors which predated the pandemic, and how to use that for future curricular decisions. And I've extracted 3 points here, given the Cardinal core curriculum in the CFS semester, front-loaded or top-loaded, before negative experiences begin to accumulate in the student and things become negative for them, and cause them to disengage a little bit. Equip them early. The second is to bring this kind of information, and they're largely in the life skills section of the CFS 1889 student learning outcomes. Bring it to them. Here's the difference. Colleges and universities often, or courses too, have a list of resources where the students could go, which essentially says, if you ain't right in some way, you can go. If you're not learning right, you can go there. And if you're not mentally well, you can go there. But services like that are severely underutilized. And it might surprise you also to know that during the pandemic, the seeking out of services, help seeking, is flat or decreased during the pandemic year. So rather than stigmatize by saying, if you have a problem, go there, normalize it by, in the classroom, talking about the positive emotions. the things like, and make it inescapable to talk about grit and positive growth mindset, wellness, optimism, joy, compassion, happiness, all of this, to normalize it and help to mitigate some of their experiences. The biggest objection, of course, is that I'm not an expert in it. I'm not either. But there are experts out there, besides your own lived experience, to talk 3 minutes here, 5 minutes there about something just in time. There are experts out there, because the attention to this has been going on for years now, that there are grab and go modular things that can be done to facilitate a conversation about these things that students crave and I believe need. Finally, an attention to these capitalizes on and builds on 3 really important existing energies. And those energies include the energy of equity mindedness. And this is, I mean, of the campus, but also especially of the nation. There's an energy of trauma informed work right now, and an energy of an attention to emotional and mental health that I think together would not have risen to the surface as much had there not been for a pandemic. So I thank you for attention to this, and now I'll turn it over to Carrie Woodward for a different and hopefully complementary perspective on our incoming class.